Welcome to Fear Free's webinar on Do-It-Yourself Dog Enrichment. I'm Lori Chamberland, the Education Manager here at Fear Free, and I have with me my colleague across the country, Mikkel Becker, who's the lead animal trainer at Fear Free. Mikkel, how are you doing today, friend?
Doing good. Have my two dogs on my lap, had some coffee, so I'm pretty happy.
Life is good. Awesome to hear. And let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about food puzzles first. So there are a number of great commercially available food puzzles, and we definitely encourage you guys to check those out. But right now, with stay-at-home restrictions, it might be a little bit more difficult to get your hands on a certain product. So we thought you guys would appreciate some ideas on recommendations of how you can make your own food puzzles right at home with items that you have handy in the house. So Mikkel, what would be some of those recommendations that we have?
Well, what's awesome is that we can use a lot of things that we're just about ready to recycle. So for instance, like a milk jug, or we can use cardboard boxes, we can use packaging paper, we can even use like just recyclable paper, like pieces of your magazine, like the advertisements you're getting ready to get rid of, things like that. And when we supervise our pets, what we can do is we can actually scatter their kibble, we can scatter treats, chews, even toys for those dogs that love to find toys. We can put those inside of the different boxes, inside of the different types of containers. One container that I found that actually makes a really good food puzzle type of container is actually just the cherry tomato type of container, because they can learn to bat it around with their paws, and so the inner contents will start to spill out over time, and you can actually make it more challenging by even crumpling up some paper on the inside, so that way it doesn't all fall out all at once. So that's a really neat way to help the dogs really to expend some energy, both mentally and physically. And we can really increase the challenge. So for those dogs that are really good at this, you can actually create a puzzle of sorts where you have multiple boxes or multiple containers inside of one another. So the dog has to pull it out piece by piece. And even something like a paper towel roll or toilet paper roll, which hopefully everyone has a supply of those now, we can actually go ahead and scrunch the ends, or we can start to squeeze and twist different parts of it. So that way the dog has to really work with their paws and with their mouth to pull and to push all those little pieces out. So it can be really fun for them. And for those dogs that are brand new at this, you can make it really easy for them. So something just like having an egg carton, and we can just place kibble inside of each one. And once they get good at that, you can actually start to up that challenge. So that might be where you perhaps put some different dog toys, or for the smaller size dogs, some smaller size balls for throwing on the top of each of those egg holders. And then we can also do things like we can put regular tennis balls on with a muffin tin. So we can use a muffin tin, and we can place the kibble on the inside of that, and then place the tennis balls on the top, over the top of that. Or we can even do things like taking our regular, anything that you use for baking, so like a baking tin or anything that's not easy for the dog to break, and we can place like the tennis balls on the inside of that, so the dog has to really work with their nose to find the kibble underneath, or actually pull them out with their mouth or with their paws in order to get those really tasty treats underneath of that. And the favorite one for my daughter's dog, Otis, right here, he's our new rescue. His favorite one was creating and it's more of an interactive game to play with them, is taking a milk jug and actually with the handle part, tying a leash to the end of that, so you can use rope or a leash. And so it's something that you hold on to. And on the very bottom of the milk jug, just cutting a little tiny hole. And so then up on the very top of it, just filling it with the kibble. And so what he does is he can bat it with his paws, with his nose, and it's this really fun game where he gets to kind of run and chase after the milk jug, and then the treats fall out, so then he gets to search for them all over the floor. And so, and it's really entertaining. It really made my daughter and I both really laugh. It's just hilarious to watch, and it's a really good mental game for him as well.
So enrichment for you and enrichment for Otis.
Definitely, that's been one of our main forms of entertainment really during this time, is just watching the dogs. Yeah, you will definitely be entertained, that's for sure.
I love that. We had a question for you. Andrea is asking about what the little device is on the collars, on your dog's collars.
So this is an Animo tracker. So it's an pet activity tracker. And it's really cool. It syncs with your phone, and it tracks like how far they go each day, it tracks their calories burned. And actually, I just started using it, but once I've used it for about a week, it will actually start to track other things. So it will track if there are any major changes in their activity level. So if like shaking, for instance, or scratching, so both medically and emotionally, it's a great way to track your dog. And it also tracks barking. So it's a really cool way to kind of track your dog's progress, track their sleep. And so it's an Animo tracker.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, any more food puzzle ideas, or should we switch gears and let's talk a little bit about some scent-based ideas? So it's no secret that scent is the dog's most powerful form of their most powerful sense. But as humans, that's not necessarily the case for us. So we don't necessarily think about scent as a form of enrichment, but actually it can be one of the best forms of enrichment for them, enriching their body and their minds. And so it's a great way to engage them and keep them interested during this time. What are some scent-based activity ideas that you have for these guys?
One of the easiest things that's possible for dogs really of any activity level is to allow dogs to stop and to smell the roses. So often we just get so focused on, we're going on this walk, we're gonna go this far, and we forget about what's important to our dogs. And what's really important to our dogs is being able to go out and to be able to actually sniff and to investigate. And they tell so much about their world just by being able to explore, or as my dad, Dr. Marty Becker says, checking their P-mail each time that they go out. So rather than just being so focused on how fast we're going, how far we're going, just really letting your dog investigate those smells. And whether it's at the end of the leash or even something like a long line, if you have the space, letting your dog explore, letting them move after those smells. So they may catch a scent trail and letting them actually explore and sniff after that. Or rather than passing that bush your dog wants to smell, letting them take that time to stop and smell. And it's really fulfilling for them mentally too. And it's calming for them. So I think that's something that's really overlooked and something that's very important. And there are a lot of other great scent games that we can play with our dogs. So when we're looking outside, if you have an outside space that you can utilize with your dog, a great game to play is scattering kibble out on the grass. So it's almost like a modified Easter egg hunt of sorts for your dog, where they get to go out in the grass and they get to hunt and really search with their nose for that kibble that's inside of the grass. And so with our family's dogs, this is something that will take them an hour or 2 hours to get to eat their food. And they love it. It's a really neat way that's very natural for them. So really using their nose to find that food that they can scavenge out of the grass, great thing you can do. But you can also create your own type of Easter egg hunt indoors as well. There are different enrichment mats that you can get for your dogs. And there are some on the market, and some for those who sew. I'm not a sewer, I'm not very domesticated, but you can actually create your own. There are some great patterns that they have on Pinterest. And so you can create a really nice type of snuffle mat for your dog. But in a pinch, you can actually create one of your own just by what you already have. So a lot of bath mats, for instance, have the higher kind of piling on them. And so when they have like the little loops, or even more like the fuzzy kind of carpeting, things like that is a little bit higher, those are great ways that you can just scatter the kibble in there. So your dog has to search it out and use their nose to pull out those different pieces. And so actually in our home, we use both a bath mat and a pink fuzzy mat that we just happen to have. And those are two great enrichment mats that work really well for both of our dogs. But there are also mats out there, some enrichment mats that have different hidden pockets too. And there are also patterns for you to be able to create your own. So different pockets that they have to kind of search around. And there are a lot of mental challenges out there for dogs. And what's really neat is that there are a lot of additions you can add onto those maps. So once your dog aces that part of the enrichment map puzzle, you can add on another part of it, or you can switch it up so you keep it really interesting for your dog. And it's a great way to interact with your dog as well. So a lot of those are more interactive. Or my personal favorite that is a huge hit in my home, and It worked really well for my senior dog, Willie, and it's worked really well for Indy when he was a puppy, and now for both of our dogs as adults, is the iDig. And so what it is it's a dig type of mat, and it has different hidden pockets. And so basically it encourages your dog to dig indoors in a safe way. So it has all of these really cool ways that you can like hide different, it has different pockets on the inside. So your dog has to use their paws, nose, and burrow inside to kind of find all the different treats and chews and toys. And so I really like to mix it up for them. So you keep it really interesting. And variety is the spice of life for people and really for dogs as well. So the more interesting you can keep it, really the better. So whether we're using enrichment mats or food puzzles, throwing in maybe a little treat here or there, or adding in a chew, just different things. The more that you can keep it interesting, the better it is for them mentally, and it's really fulfilling. It's almost like, you know, when we're playing a slot machine, for instance, when you don't know what you're going to get or when the win's going to come. That's the same type of concept with enrichment food puzzles and food mats. So it's really engaging for them.
Great. I actually got a great idea from you recently that I did with my love to dig border collie Brio, taking a kiddie pool, and then I took just her toy box and just upended her toy box full of toys. There was plush toys in there, balls in there, and then I took a handful of her kibble and I just kind of threw it on top. So she spent a good half an hour digging through that, and that was a great idea that you gave us. You actually just answered one of the questions. You must be clairvoyant today. We got a question in on how to approach some of these ideas when the dog is not usually interested. And I think when you talked about variety and keeping it, keeping it interesting, keeping it not the same, making novel sense, anything you want to expand on there?
So definitely starting with what the dog is interested in. So there are some dogs who just really, especially if they just haven't experienced a lot of this before in their lifetime, it can take a little bit of encouragement. So even in dogs, I've heard many times, well, my dog's not interested in the Kong, for instance. That's a really common thing. Or my dog's not interested in the food puzzle. But there are different ways that we can make it an easy win for them. So the dog may just be getting frustrated and kind of giving up early. They may not have like that resilience where they know that if I keep up at it, then it's eventually going to pay off. So if we can make it a really easy win, that's going to be really helpful on building that resilience, building their confidence with using those different types of food puzzles. And one great thing that we can do, a lot of people don't have food puzzles for their dogs yet. And so while it's really encouraged and something that people really should do, even if they only have food bowls for their dogs, you can use that. That's a great thing to even start off with. So one fun game that you can play with your dogs is you can create a treasure hunt in your home. And in the treasure hunt, you can hide different goodies for your dog to find. And one of the goodies can be multiple food bowls that are hidden throughout the home, or even just in one specific room for your dog to find. So you can place this, perhaps a blanket over the top of one of the food bowls that has a portion of their meal, or maybe a pillow, or start off really easy for those dogs that are brand new at this. You can even have them right out in the open and just encourage your dog to find them. And you can also be right there with your dog to praise them. And just the more encouragement that they can have, and even rewards on the way to find the food bowl for some of those dogs that are brand new at this, that can be a really great place to start. So having 5 or 6 food bowls that you hide for your dog to find, that's an awesome, awesome mind game for them. And it's really amazing too. I think it's really fulfilling to be able to see, gosh, just how powerful our dogs' noses are, where just a couple of days ago, having Indy go in my daughter's room and had all of the portions of his meal hidden under different blankets and pillows and different things for him to find. And just almost immediately, he's able to find these. And I think that they are so much more capable than we even realize. And so as your dog gets really good at this, you can really start to do that all throughout your home. And I actually got this idea originally from Dr. Stephanie Bornswile at Tufts when I was... Yeah, they're helping shadowing her and Dr. Dogman, and she said it was a really great way to keep her dogs busy when her son would come home after school, because a lot of times the dogs were kind of crazy at that time of day and they just had an abundance of energy and they were really excited and it was hard for her son to concentrate. So what she did is she put the little scavenger hunt all over the home for her dogs to do during that time. So it helped to manage that problem of the dogs having this excess energy and being more boisterous by giving them a specific activity. So that treasure hunt activity is great. And if you have food puzzles, you can do it with food puzzles. Food puzzles are ideal, but you can use the food bowl. You can use toys. Toys are a great thing that you can do with your dog. And so for those dogs that are like tennis ball loving hounds, for instance, or if they love to play tug, you can actually encourage them to find those toys in the home. So whether it is finding their food bowl or finding their toys, what you do want to do is use a specific cue before you start the game. So that way your dog isn't kind of always on high alert, like, oh boy, what am I going to find now? And I need to be hunting for food all the time. Instead, what you want to do is have a specific cue. So such as search or find it, whatever your cue is, to let them know that the game is on. And you may have a specific close to that game as well. So maybe, okay, all done, or whatever it is once they found everything. So that helps them to kind of settle down for those dogs that otherwise may just be really intense all the time.
Yeah, I think I love that ties into a question that we got from Laura, who said her dog is super smart and they do food puzzles all the time, but she unintentionally taught him how to get into stuff. So I think using that find it cue, putting it on cue would help to take care of that as well. So we want you to go and seek it when we say find it or whatever your cue is. Another question here, if we can go back a little bit to stop and smell the roses on a walk. So a question from an attendee who wants to know any training tips for the big dogs she wants her dog to get out and stop and smell the roses, but it's accidentally created a real puller. She already has a big, large dog who's really a puller, and sometimes it's a little bit less enjoyable than she would like for her on her end. So any training tips that we can maybe weave into that as well?
Absolutely. So one of the top things is really to look at the type of equipment that you're using out in the walk with your dog. So for whether small dog or big dog, I'm a huge fan of the front clip harnesses or the multi-attachment harnesses that attach at 2 different points. And those specifically can be really helpful because it's really helpful during training. Say that you are in a tight space, for instance, which maybe right now this doesn't apply, but especially once we're starting to get out around people again and you're moving in closer quarters, the 2 attachment points, when it clips both on the front of the dog's chest and their back, that can be really helpful for better guiding your dog and gently leading them when you're going in closer quarters. Or for those dogs that pull, when you have it attached specifically to the front of the dog's chest, that's a way to gently deter that pulling. And I especially like those harnesses that go around the neck and then right in the center of the chest. So that way their shoulders are free to move. So those are really, really helpful. And once your dog is doing really well, or if they're at a point in the walk where maybe they're a little bit more tired, they aren't pulling as much, you can always switch it over to the back clip portion of the harness too. So it gives you lots of options. So starting off with the right equipment is helpful. The other thing that you can do is, so we can teach the heel, we can reward those moments of our dog checking in. I think so many times it gets overlooked. So for instance, just our dog, even attending to us just for a second, or even orienting their body towards us just for that little tiny millisecond, we want to capture those moments. So rewarding that with a good or a yes, or if you use a clicker, clicking that moment and giving that treat. And I know that there are definitely some dogs that are so interested in the environment and in those smells that treats maybe don't hold as much value. It's definitely that way for Indiana Bones. He's a puggle, and I think it's definitely that beagle part in him that's like, oh my God, there's just so many scents out here to explore and to check out. So for him, the big thing has definitely been actually using those smells and using that desire to go to those specific spaces as the motivator in and of itself for that loose leash walking to get there. So, and also those moments of our dog checking in with us. So what we want to do is say that, and you may be able to kind of check it out beforehand where it's like, okay, we're going to this grassy area, or there's this one bush where the dog always wants to go towards, or anything that's higher where a lot of dogs have probably marked before and there's going to be a lot of scents in that area. You can kind of check that out beforehand. But what we want to do is we want to, as soon as our dog is checking in with us on the way over to that, we want to reinforce those moments. You can reinforce it with the treat, but we can also just reinforce that with that movement forward. However, as soon as our dog hits the end of the leash and they're really focused and they're pulling, they're really moving towards that, that's where we want to stand like a statue, freeze, be still, don't move forward until we have that nice loose leash or until our dog checks in. So for Indy, for instance, if he ever gets kind of lost in scent and just is so focused out and forward and just that's all he's kind of focused in on, he's learned over time that in order to really follow those smells that he wants to go towards, the fastest way and the best way to do that is to check in with me and to actually move towards that on that loose leash. So the release to go smell and to go check out that area, that can be the reward in and of itself for them checking in with us or for them being on that nice loose leash.
I love that. Thank you for those tips. That's great. Since many of us are at home all day, or at least for many more hours a day with the dog than we're used to, sometimes we want to involve us in the activities with the dogs. And in many cases, people's kids are home alone with the dogs as well. So I know that a lot of the activities that you have some ideas for can be involved with kids as well as the dogs. So what are some of the more interactive type games that you can think of that you can play with your dog? And if you want to involve the kids, you also could.
Well, one game that my daughter Reagan absolutely loves, and the dogs, both of them absolutely love it as well, is playing hide and go seek. And this is a really great way to actually encourage the come and call behavior too, and to make it more of a fun game. And so while we may start off with the come and called right out in the open for our dog to be able to easily see both people, and so we practice that at the start with the dog running to each person. So maybe you have 2 or more people in your home that are doing this. We can also call it like a Red Rover type of game of sorts, where we encourage the dog to move from person to person to person. And once the dog is readily doing that, and for those dogs that maybe are a little bit hesitant, one thing you can actually do is add in some movement. So the more that we can add in some movement and get the dog encouraged to be like, oh, that's interesting, I want to follow that, because dogs naturally want to move after something that's moving, and especially if it's moving away from them. So whether you are practicing in the hallway, in the garage, the living room, an open area of your home, or out in the backyard if you have access to something like that, or even with your dog on a long line out in an open grassy area, this can be a great way to practice the come and calls. We're calling the dog towards us, using that inviting body language, whether we are getting closer to the ground, maybe patting our legs, moving backwards, or even turning and walking or jogging or running away for those dogs that are okay with that can be encouraged with a little bit of movement. And as soon as the dog reaches you or catches up with you, that's when you stop and you give them that great reward for catching up. And once the dog is really good at this, we can start to play hide and go seek with them. So that's where you may have one person that's distracting the dog or that's holding on to the dog while the other person goes and hides. And when the dog, so we may start off really easy with the person just in the other room out in the open, but as they get really good, we can actually start to do things like closing the doors, hiding behind the doors, hiding under the bed, things like that. And it's really fun. It's pretty amazing too how the dog can actually search and sniff you out. I feel like my whole life I will be like continually amazed by the power of our dog's nose to be able to do that and to find us. And dogs just love this. So whether you're hiding under a blanket, behind the couch, or whatever it might be, and be aware too that dogs, while it may seem really obvious to us, the hiding place for dogs, it's really not as much, because dogs, their vision is definitely different than our own. And while they're really big on movement and can easily perceive movement, when a person is stationary, it's a lot harder for them to be able to perceive that. So you can make the hiding really fun. It's actually really funny too, to be able to watch us. So, and give them a cue. So that person may call them, or you may say something specifically like, find Reagan or find that person. So the dog can eventually, for those really smart dogs, you can actually have them find specific people as well.
I love that. I used to play a version of that outdoors with my Labradors when we would go for walks in the forest. The cue was, where am I? And I would hide behind a tree or a bush or something. And I swear that was stronger than their recall cue. They really loved that. They really loved the seeking out to find us. So yeah, great tips there. Question here from Michelle, who has an Anatolian Shepherd. She's on kennel rest for a broken pelvis. And the dog is really bored, and she's a rescue, but she's not super interested in toys. So Michelle says she's tried fabric toys and rubber balls and Kong toys to try and get the dog interested, but nothing really seems to interest her. So I think this is a good general question. How do you get a dog who isn't super toy motivated interested in playing with toys in general?
Mm-hmm. So I think there are a couple different pieces there. So for sure with the shepherd, one thing that we want to look at is just continuing to find those things that are really going to engage their mind and help to occupy their time. And so one thing that you can do is even looking at creating more of those lickable kind of stationary food puzzles. So while there are some food puzzles that are going to be more active where the dog's needing to bat it around with their paws or their nose, really more of those kind of cavity toy type of food puzzles can be helpful. So one activity that you can do is you can create your own popsicles. So that's where you take something like some low sodium chicken broth, a little bit of yogurt, different things you would actually just put inside of a Kong, and you can fill that inside of a muffin tin or an ice cube tray, and you can pop one out for your dog to enjoy. Or you can even do things like having part of their kibble frozen inside of there, and the dog actually you can give them the whole tray, for instance, say that you have or the whole muffin tin, for instance. So maybe it's just filled just part of the way. So the dog really has to kind of work and work and work in order to get that out. And so it can really be a great thing, a great activity when they're supervised to keep them busy and to keep them focused. And so if we have those food puzzles, we can also do that. So the more that we can like freeze them to make them longer lasting, that can be really helpful. But there are also different toys. So for those dogs that aren't really into toys, we can definitely teach our dogs to be more into toys by actually training them. And so whatever your dog really, really likes, you can help to condition that toy into being a big reinforcer for your dog as well. So I would probably start off with something that your dog is more likely to go towards. So something like that interactive food puzzle, like the milk jug on the end of the rope, or there's like the tug-a-jug type of food puzzle that is a tug toy food puzzle, kind of 2-in-1 type of thing. So the dog holds on to one end as you hold on to the other, and so the kibble falls out. So different things like that that are more interactive and you are involved, that can be helpful for those dogs that need to be a little bit more encouraged. But you can also do things like, so on the outside of the Kong, for instance, or a Kong wobbler, or even a tennis ball type of toy, even having a little bit of a spreadable, lickable toy, or a spreadable, lickable type of treat, that can be really helpful. So with a Kong wobbler, for instance, which is a different type of food puzzle, or even with like the do-it-yourself type of food puzzle, which may be something like, you know, perhaps it's like the creamer with the creamer container with the lid taken off. That can be a great food puzzle. And maybe at the very start, we just have a little spread of peanut butter on the outside. So something to just spark the dog's interest, get them interested in that, and just that initial encouragement. So such as that peanut butter, that little bit of cheese on the outside of the Kong wobbler type of toy, that can get the dog starting to lick that. And naturally, when they do that, the food falls out as they start to tip that toy. And so it's an easy win for them. So we can give them those easy wins. And the more that we give them those easy wins and reinforce it with our praise for those dogs that are really big on our attention, or especially those treats, that can be really a helpful way to go.
Great, thank you. Good question here from Adrian. One thing that we might want to talk a little bit about is a multiple dog household, especially one where you've got one super smart dog who's super interested and engaged in the toys and maybe grabbing up all the food puzzles before the other dogs get to. So any tips on multiple dog households and how we might want to deal with that?
Definitely. So for sure, and thank you for bringing up that point too. So in multiple dog households, especially for those dogs that are prone to resource guarding, what we want to do is separate the dogs. So what you may have one dog that's engaging in one activity and the other dog is being able to search throughout the home, for instance. So if you have a dog that is crate trained, maybe that's the time that they get to have that stationary food puzzle while the other dog has that ability to go out and search. Or maybe you have the dogs in different rooms. So you may just have them in separate areas of the home during that time. So they each get their own opportunity to do that search. So definitely separating them, trying to find a way to manage that time. And so whether it's separate rooms, separate times that they do it, that can be really helpful. And one thing that just sparked my memory as we were talking about the indoor dig pit. So that is really helpful with having the kiddie pool, for instance. That's a great thing to use. Whether it is with the do-it-yourself type of food puzzles that you create, or creating this big dig pit of sorts on your own, which you can do with having, you know, use clothing, so such as maybe your old t-shirts or old blankets, any of your pet blankets, you can actually put that on the inside of like a recycle bin. Or actually for my dogs, this has been really helpful for Otis, who is absolutely terrified of bath time. And one of the ways we've been working on helping to condition him to have calmer and happier baths is to actually do his indoor dig pit inside of the bathtub. So we have the bathtub, you know, completely dry, and on the inside of there we have multiple blankets, and I have underneath the blankets and within the blankets little pieces of his kibble on the inside of there, different shoes, different toys. So it really is a great mind game. So while he's doing that in the bathroom, Indy can be out here in the living room enjoying his food puzzle or his search for the multiple food bowls. So you can try and manage it in ways like that as well.
I love that. Yeah, that's great tips. Thank you. Well, time has flown by, so before we wrap up for today, I know, Mikkel, that you're actually wrapping up and currently working on some enrichment videos and handouts, and we wanted to know, where can people go if they want to find out more on enrichment resources for dogs and cats?
So fearfreehappyhomes.com is a really great resource for us professionals as well as for any of our clients. So it's completely free, and there are just, I mean, it's just like a treasure of different videos and just different great blogs on different types of enrichment for dogs and for cats and for other types of critters as well. And actually specific to the situation that everyone is going through right now, we have some great resources coming out to keep pets entertained and to help keep them from getting that canine cabin fever of sorts that should be up this week. So be on the lookout for that. And we also, on top of what's coming out this week, we have coming out very soon as well, are different training games you can do with your dogs, and also some activities for kids to do with dogs as well to help keep both of them entertained.
That sounds awesome. And before we let you guys go for the day, yeah, definitely check out those videos. They feature the two currently sleeping, but sometimes a lot more active than sleeping in these videos. Indy and Otis are going to be featured in them, so they're super cute. A lot of the ideas that Mikkel talked about today are featured in those videos as well. So thank you everyone so much for joining us, and definitely check out, as Mikkel said, fearfreehappyhomes.com for more enrichment ideas, and stay tuned. We'll be in touch with you guys. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.